Hi. Welcome to the lecture on Chapter 5, Switch Configuration. Now, for the last, class and a half, used most of NET125 using switches. So far in this semester, you've used quite a lot of it. So now we're going to look at just a little bit more detail and some potential configuration that you can do, both initial setup, recovery, security, to kind of help you out. So we're going to look at basic switch configuration, and it's going to be initial settings, how to configure switch ports to make sure you're meeting network requirements, and then switch security. So basic configuration and security. So how do I turn on a port, turn it off, things of that nature. So let's look at the basic switch configuration here. Now, the boot sequence in a switch is pretty much no different than any other computer. Once you power it on, it goes through a power on self-test, POST, P-O-S-T, power on self-test. While it's doing that, once it runs and says, okay, what physical things are working, not working, then it'll run the bootloader, which then starts to load the operating system. It finds the location of the iOS and starts loading that information. So that whole loop first, starts CPU, checks the flash file system, make sure it exists, and because that's where our flash is, where most of our iOS is stored, that it locates it and finds it and loads the iOS. Now, just give you a little bit. Now, we know that to find the switch has to go through some certain things. So basically, it attempts to automatically boot using the information in the boot environment. Then if it says, hey, if that variable is not set, it performs a top-down search through the flash file system. So it's going to first try to set up, hey, you've set a boot environment. I'm going to go there first. But if not, I'm going to go through top-bottom search. So you want to make sure that your path names allow me to do that, to get the first one that you want. Because what it's going to do is going to load and execute the first executable file it can find in Flash. And then the iOS software then initializes the interfaces using the iOS commands found in the configuration file and the startup configuration. And where do we store that? You remember your NET125 class? It's stored in non-volatile RAM. Now, you can use the boot system command to set that environment variable. And then, of course, to show that, you can do the show boot command will actually show you what that command is. So here you're seeing the configuration, boot system command, and I'm putting in the flash, the storage location, the file name, and then the name of the iOS that you're trying to run. So you can set that sequence up any way you want. Now, what happens if you're trying to recover from a system crash? Now, the bootloader can also be, if for some reason the iOS can't be loaded, you can go through the console and connect. So you end up connecting to the PC, to the console cable, but unplug the power cord. So what's that do with the switch? There's no on-off switch. You got to take the power off. And then when I reconnect that power cord, press and hold the mode button. If you're going to look at your switch, you're going to find a mode button. So as you're connecting power, press and hold that mode button, and then all of a sudden the system LED will verify that, it'll briefly be amber, then it'll turn green. Once it turns green, release that mode button, but it's got to wait. You got to wait till it turns green. Then once you do it, all of a sudden you're going to see the prompt is going to be switch. Because what usually normally happened when you first boot up your system, and if it was working right, you saw what? A different prompt. So you see the colons there? That indicates to you you're in the loader program. Now, just to show you here, you got several different LED buttons that you're going to want to know. You got the system, you got whether I got my redundant power supply, port statuses, what kind of duplex, what kind of speed do I have? Now, this is a little bit older one, but this is the 2960. What the status, the duplex, the speed, and if it's getting power over Ethernet or not. But you'll see also this mode button that's the one you want to press if you're trying to get, trying to reconfigure from a crash. So you want to make sure you understand those buttons there. Now, some basic switch management. Now, to access this switch remotely, what do you need to have? What does any two computers need to be able to communicate to each other? I need an IP address. What am I going to assign an IP address to make that happen? So basically, I've got to manage this from a remote network. I need a default gateway and an IP address. I need an IP address, subnet mask, and a gateway, which what has to be. Now, it's got to be the switch virtual interface. Now, what is that switch virtual interface? Well, that switch interface is what? It is our VLAN. That is what we're going to do. Now, in this case, your default when you first bring up your system is what? It usually starts at an interface as VLAN 1. Basically, since that's a default from a security standpoint, you want to change your VLAN to some other interface, some other number. So if somebody else gets access to your network, they can't. Well, it'll be more difficult for them to crack it because it isn't sitting up at the standard default. So it's kind of nice to be able to say, hey, I'm going to set up that interface to this switch through some other VLAN number. So in this case, we're switching that virtual interface, VLAN 1, to interface 99. I'm going to give an IP address, a subnet mask, and I'm going to bring that port up. Or I'm not. So that's with that no shutdown, and then exit this command. And of course, what am I also doing? Making sure I save that configuration in the startup configuration. So the next time I power up this switch, that VLAN information is stored. But it's also stored not just, where is it stored? You remember when we had to clean up stuff? You had to clean up the VLAN.dat file. So now, we've set an IP address. We've stored information away. Now I got to do what? Default gateway. Got an IP address. I need a default gateway because I need to find out if I'm going to log into this switch to manage it remotely. I'm coming through some router. I'm coming from my house through some other port to get this interface to get to this network. So I've set an IP address on here to allow me to connect to that network, but I also need to set the default gateway because it's got to be able to reply back. So how do I configure that? Configure terminal, IP default gateway, and I give it an IP address. And exit, and then also make sure you save that configuration. So I've set the IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. Now I can make sure that I can connect to the switch remotely. And now to verify it works, show IP interface brief shows you what? VLAN. I got a VLAN interface, IP address, and it says I'm connected, I'm up, so the status is up. Yeah, granted my protocol's down, but I'm not communicating any data yet, so it tells me that everything is okay. Now, one thing with switches, we talked about it at 126, you have full duplex or half duplex. Full duplex, I'm transmitting data both sending and receiving at the same time. Half duplex, I'm either sending or receiving, similar to a walkie-talkie. Press a button, you can talk, let it go to listen. You have to make sure that your switches have the same duplex. Otherwise, if one's on half, one's on full, you will not be able to communicate to it. And you can probably expect probably an exam question showing you that situation. Now, how do I set configure the duplex and the speed? So I've got my interface. Got to make sure which interfaces they are. So I got to configure terminal, set the interface, in this case, fast Ethernet 01. I'm setting my duplex command to full. I'm setting the speed to 100 meg and then of course save that configuration. Of course, you got to do what? I got to do it in both places. So you got to make sure some of the troubleshooting labs and problems you may see will have a mismatch in speed and a mismatch in duplex. So if they don't match, it won't work. Now, luckily, that's been a pain over the years. So they've created a system, an MDIX, auto MDIX, that allowed you to transmit. I don't care about speed. I don't care about duplex. I don't even care about the cable type. You remember if you had, when you connected between PC to switch, you can use what? A straight through cable. In theory, when you did switch to switch, a like device, you did what? You did a crossover. You made sure that cable was different. And then you still had the straight through cable here. So now what we've done here is we've said, hey, I'm going to, because I don't need historically, you had it, like devices needed a crossover cable but this auto MDIX eliminates that problem. So now you can do straight through crossover cables. When auto MDIX is enabled, it detects and appropriately configures that, so it doesn't care about the duplex, the speed, or what kind of cable you've got. But of course, you have to set the speed and duplex to auto. The question is, how do you do that? Well, configure terminal, get to that interface. Duplex goes to auto, speed goes to auto, and MDIX goes to an auto. Some of the newer releases, newer switches, these are now the defaults. But you may be working on older equipment, so pay attention to how do I turn auto on. Now, how do I verify it? You use the show controllers command and look for auto MDIX, and it should come back and say it's on. Flags we won't worry about, but at least tells you that this feature is running. And you'll find most of the newer switches, you will find that is just a standard default. Now, what kind of verification can I do on ports? You can do the show interfaces, to show the interface status and configuration, startup configuration, running configuration, slow show flash. Says, hey, what information stored in the flash drive? So I want to make sure I know which iOS version's running, or I'm saving. I need to understand where that flows, what version of software I'm running. Show history shows you what? The history of the commands that have been entered so far. Show IP interface, and we also have looked at the show MAC address table in the past. So those are all verification that you can verify with your system. Now, what happens if I have a network access layer issue? So now I start looking at, I've got output errors, I've got tons of collisions, I've got 3 input errors, I've got CRC errors. Now, I don't have any runts, so those are what? Packets that are less than 64 bytes, or things, no giants. So at least that tells me I'm not losing bad packets, but I'm getting CRC failures, so I'm getting errors there, and I'm getting a lot of output errors, a lot of collisions, things arriving late. So the show interface, fast Ethernet, it's going to show you what errors you may have. Now, what kind of error types could you have, and what can you do? You got input errors, the total number of errors. Runs, like I said, is less than 64 bytes. Giants are more than 15, 18. CRC errors just says, hey, that checksum that's added to the end of a frame, that mathematical formula that you took the data, ran the calculation, stored that number, and compared that number to the same at the receiving end, that number didn't match. Output errors, just the total number of errors that were prevented from final transmission. Collisions, messages weren't set because of an Ethernet collision. Now, late collisions occur that after 512 bits have been, so you send 512 bits and somehow a collision occurred at that time. So you got several different error types and at least a few things you can look at to take a look at. Now here's a troubleshooting guide as far as what kind of things you want to do. Is one, you want to take the show interface command. Interface up. If it's up, are there indications of noise? So now you want to say, okay, am I in a heavy machinery environment that I'm getting other electromagnetic interference on the system, and I need to find a way to isolate it. Maybe you need to put in some conduit to run the cables through to protect that information. Maybe I need to go to shielded Ethernet cables, whatever the case may be. Options for you. Is your duplex setting, or your speed setting the same? So those are things that, yes, the interface is up, but I'm still having a problem. Now, if the interface is not up, I got to verify the cables. So I got to check the cables and connectors. Pretty much what? I start the physical way and work up. So I'm looking at the cables, I'm looking at the connectors, then I'm verifying speed, duplex on both ends to make sure things are up. And then, is the problem still resolved? If it's resolved, you're done. If it's not, you need to escalate. You says, I need to find somebody else who's got more skills than I am, because this is just an introductory class. Maybe your second class, but your level of expertise on this is still relatively on the low end. So let's look at some ways of protecting your switch. So we've a little bit on setting them up. So let's look at connecting. Now, you know that you can use Telnet or Secure Shell. Telnet has and should be replaced by Secure Shell. So it's an encrypted, because we knew that Telnet, everything is sent out text-based. So all your passwords, IP addresses, all this stuff. So if somebody got access to seeing, put Wireshark on your line, they could see your password. So you want to make sure you turn off Telnet, turn on Secure Shell, and then that way at least your messages are included. Now, based on the version of iOS, you want to make sure that Secure Shell is enabled. So the question is, how do I configure Secure Shell? Well, one, I verify the support. Do I have Secure Shell up? So show IP Secure Shell, at least it'll tell me that I've got support for it. Now I've got to configure the IP domain. Now I've got to set up a domain name. I got to set up a system, so that people can say, in this case, I'm setting up IP domain name cisco.com. And then I've got to set what am I going to encrypt my messages to? So I've got to put the command crypto. I'm going to say generate a key, and which type of key do I want to set? I want to do an RSA key pair. And so you're doing configure terminal, set up a domain, tell them I'm going to encrypt the data, and now I've got to create some passwords. I got to, for each, so I'm going to configure an authentic user, in this case, username, admin, what kind of password is it? It's a secret password, and it's CCNA, sorry. Where do I want to set it? I want to set it up on all 16 VTY ports. And then I want to say, I want to transport, so I'm going to set the transport protocol, say, I'm going to receive only input Secure Shell information. I want to make sure it's all local, exit, and I want to make sure I've changed my version. So this section here configured the VTY lines. It says, hey, what am I going to do? I'm going to say, I want to make sure that I'm only receiving Secure Shell information. So set up a domain, develop the key, set up an admin, user ID who can have access to your system. Tell me which, I'm going to make sure that all input is Secure Shell on the VTY ports, and which version of the Secure Shell is it. In this case, we're setting up version 2. Now, so just to give you a rough idea, what happens once you try to get access to PuTTY, you're going to be prompted for, because we said what? I'm created a username admin and a password. So it's going to, the first time you try to log in, you're going to get what? You're going to be prompted for login, password, and then before you get anything else, you got to do your enable password, because once you get this password, now it gets you back into the switch itself, and then whatever passwords you've got set up on enable, you need to make sure that you enter that too before you can get to the exact command prompt. Now, how do I verify? So I show IP secure shell gives me that it's enabled, tells me which version's running, what kind of has there been what's my timeout set up, how many times will I try, what kind of key size. Of course, the larger the better, but right now default at 1024. So this shows you, show SSH. So this says on an IP version. This show SSH says, hey, I've got versions running. It's in and out. The encryption type, who started it. So just some ways of verifying secure shell is running on your enable. Now, what happens if, because we said with a switch, once you power it up, all the ports are live. Well, what happens if I don't want that? What happens if I don't want just somebody to walk? Because what happens if the switch is running and I get access to my to the switch room? I can just walk in with a Ethernet cord, plug into a port, and I've got access to the network. Because what happens with your switch? Because once you plug in, it says, hey, I got somebody plugged into me. Now I can give his MAC address and gives me access to everything. So what we want to do is shut down, disable ports that are not being used. So ones that you don't want somebody to walk in and use, you want to make sure you issue a shutdown command. And of course, that's same as anything else that when we bring a port up on a router, let's say, what do? You do a no shutdown command to bring it up. You're going to do a shutdown command and say, I'm going to shut this command down, this port down. So that would mean ports 4, 5, 6, and 7 in this example are down. Nobody could plug an Ethernet port in and get access to anything in the network from that. So you want to make sure you shut down command ports that are not being used. Now, there are other security measures that says, hey, I can have, while you're operating, so I want the ports up, I haven't shut it down, but I may want to restrict it even further. Of course, MAC addresses identify what? They identify your network interface card, right? The MAC address is supposed to be half of it's the company that made it, half of it's a user identification or a card identification. But you can put security on your switch to say, hey, I don't want any unknown MAC addresses to get access to my system. So how do I do that? Well, I use the switch port command. So I can manually configure these. So I can do a static secure address. So I manually configure MAC addresses. So in this case, switch port security, MAC address, and then whatever that MAC address is. So that says for this port, I'm going to say I'm only allowing that MAC address to identify. Now, dynamic secure MAC addresses, what happens if I turn the switch off and brings it back on, all this static secure stuff goes away. I got a little interrupted, so hopefully I can pick this up. So you can statically assign the port security based on the MAC address with the switch port command. Now, what happens if I want to make sure that only that MAC address? So basically I can assign that MAC, but I want to make sure that you see this one down here, secure. I'm going to learn that, you're going to run the command. I'm going to learn that MAC address. So I'm not going to statically assign it, but I'm going to learn it. I'm going to take the switch up. It's running. I plug a device in and I try to send the information. What happens? The switch says, hey, I got to find out who's attached to me, finds the MAC address. And the sticky feature says, hey, okay, you're now plugged in. I'm going to learn your MAC address and store it for future reference, so that interface will now be associated with your MAC address. Now, there are certain things as far as what considered violation, as far as MAC addresses are concerned, as far as, a security violation when there is a number of MAC addresses have been added that doesn't match. It's not in the table. You've tried multiple times. So if the number of secure addresses for that interface have been if you've added, so you can allow how many different MAC addresses will you allow at that interface. And if let's say you set it to three MAC addresses. Once I try to be that fourth one, done. You'll get an error. But there's things that now you want to do is, what do I want to do in case if a violation has occurred? The switch has three different options. I can protect that system. Says, hey, I'm not going to notify the system administrator. I'm going to indicate it. I'm going to know that I had a restriction, but I'm not going to tell anybody. So it'll be up to the administrator to come back and say, hey, I got a violation. Or I can do a restrict, which says, hey, I'm going to send an email or some kind of indication that says somebody's trying to get in at this location. Or the third is, once I get a violation, shut that port down. Don't let anybody else in, shut it down, and that'll force the administrator to then what? Bring that port back up to get that port back in. So I would lean to one of these last two versus this protect, only because if I want to keep my security up high, I'd want to make sure that I know, or when I don't know or don't notify it, that it's shut down and I'm kind of protected. So here's some modes, what kind of things can and can't place. If I got protect, pretty much says, hey, I allow everything. Restrict says, hey, I can send certain information, violation counters, but shut down, I can't forward traffic, can't move this, can't display this. I increases counter, and I do shut that port down. So it doesn't, see, these two don't bring the port down. This protect really doesn't do much of anything other than just says, yeah, okay, I'm going to let people know. But this restrict says, yeah, I'm going to send a message log. I'm going to tell another counter has happened and to create my count, but really nothing happens. But in this case, I'm going to shut the port down, increase my counter. So it'd definitely be one of these two that I'd lean towards. But that's my system, not yours. So now the question, how do I configure that? Now, the defaults, it says, hey, I port security defaults, it's not turned on. The number of MAC addresses, secure MAC addresses, is set to 1. If a violation occurs, shutdown happens. But the sticky learning address is disabled. If I wanted to have dynamic port security, so here I'm doing what? I'm showing support switch. I got interface fast Ethernet, switch port mode access. So I got to say I'm going to get access to my switch ports, and then I'm going to change the port security. I'm going to enable security to happen. So now it says, hey, you're going to dynamically learn information going on about this. Now, if I want to say, hey, I want to force MAC addresses to be learned and kept, now you do what? I could do the same thing. I says I do fast Ethernet, identify. I say I want to get in the access port. I want to get in security port. And now I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to set the maximum number of MAC addresses that can be allowed at that point. And this says I'm allowing 10. So this would tell you what? If the 11th attempt, different MAC address came in, I'm going to violate, it's going to be an error. Or if I want to enable the sticky bit to make sure I'm learning which port to assign to that port, here you got switch port security, MAC address, sticky. That says, so but you got to get the interface, switch port mode access, and then it's switch port security, MAC address sticky. So this one's setting the max number of addresses allowed. This one's saying I'm learning which MAC addresses that is going to be assigned to that interface, and no other MAC address can plug into it. Now, how do I verify it? Well, show port security interface on a per interface basis says what? Tells me the MAC interfaces, tells me which VLAN. If it's sticky, here you got the sticky MAC address. Now I've changed. Now remember this last command here we says make the maximum of 10 and set sticky. Well, here we set it to 10. I'm making sure I've learned that MAC address sticky. So both of those are fine. Now, if I want to, check the running configuration, see what's set. So here you see what? I did a show run, piped it into anything beginning fast Ethernet 019. So I want to see what's happening on interface fast Ethernet 019. So I look at all this command. I got access security maximum number of 10. I've set the sticky, and I've hard-coded that sticky bit to be a particular MAC address. So that's what it says. Internally, I've done this. Now, if I want to see what port security addresses are set and what type of security is set, here you've got you show port security address, shows me which VLAN, shows you the MAC address, which physical port, and then whether it's dynamically learned or if it was secured, that MAC address was done via sticky. So you got show port security address, or you can look at your fast Ethernet, the show run command, and look for port security and either setting sticky or maximum on that particular interface. Now, what happens if you got ports that are in a disabled state? Security, port security violation happened. It can put the switch in an air disabled state. And an air disabled state is effectively you've shut down that port. And now, when do you know that? Here you got the air disabled. So you'll know that via console messages that at least say, hey, this port has been violations occurred. It's caused by a MAC address, and we're shutting down that port. So I know that it's shut down. The question is now, how do I bring it up? So I've done the interface, show interface, give me the status, and it says here, it's air disabled. As you can tell from earlier stuff, here's my speed and auto duplex. But it says maximum address. The last MAC address that tried to get in, it showed you. That's one, the switch port, that disabled state. Now, you can do a shutdown, but you got to do a shutdown or a no shutdown must be issued to re-enable a port. So you shut it down, and now you bring it back up to change that state. So you got to remember, you got to bring in that port. So you shut it down, because when I shut it down, what did it do? It at least put it, administratively down, but it's not disabled. So the shutdown brought it back, but still the port is still not available for anybody. And then to bring it up to be able to be used, you got to issue the no shut command. So just giving you a rough idea. So hopefully in this chapter we've learned a little bit about the boot sequence, a little bit of LED, a little bit about security, duplexing, port security, violations, what do you want to do, and maybe some of the best practices in how to set this stuff up. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, give me a call.